Hello and welcome back to Hadoop Exam Learning Resources. In this session, we are going to discuss about the last abstraction, that is repository. So you need to create a repository to access your objects. So let's discuss this and in detail. So repositories are mostly used to deal with the storage, correct? So like it can be cache storage, it can be database storage, kind of thing. So that is what you would be dealing with. A repository should not be confused with the data store. So this is an Oracle database. This is a storage. This is also sometimes known as a repository, but here we are talking about the abstraction which we create in as part of our code to extract or get read, update, delete data in our storage, basically, correct? So that is what we would be doing. So here the gem file is also a caching library, which is another abstraction. So usually you implement the repository as an interface, like as you can see here, right? And either in the domain service layer or domain layer in onion architecture, hexagon architecture when you work is, and then implementation logic of the repository interface is going to be defined in the infrastructure layer. So infrastructure layer again as part of this onion architecture, hexagon architecture, like factories, repositories abstract away the retrieval of existing objects. So we discussed in previous session like CRUD operation, correct? CRUD. C is for factory, but rest 3 read, update, and delete of the object. Uh, you would be using a repository. So repository is for reading, getting, modifying, updating, or deleting your objects. Often operate as an abstraction layer over the database. However, they work with the REST API as well. You can call another REST API to do the read, update, and delete as well. A repository does not automatically imply a database. For example, deleting an existing reservation, modifying uh, an order to add a menu item, retrieve order information. These are example of the like your this RUD operation, correct? Basically, but they are not directly interacting with the database. There could be like in between a DAO layer, correct? So this is the repository like Gemfire uh, repository. Here we have implemented. Inside that you would have a Gemfire DAO, correct? DAO you can say, which is dealing with the Gemfire, and even in fact it is trying to find it out if object is not there in the uh, Gemfire. It would use the factory method, factory class, to create a new object from the Oracle database and then save into the cache and then return to you. So this is what it would be following, basically, correct? So a repository does not automatically imply the database. It would be like using internally like your DAO layer as well. Sometimes you can combine factors in repository, which is most of the cases you can do this, like which have all this food CRUD operation doing and exist, like for example an existing order. You have already order in place and be created, a few additional people have arrived, correct? For in you are waiting for them, and it seems that the table originally assigned is no longer big enough. So you need to update the order. So customer at the table that are being moved to a new table, correct? Basically moving the customer to a new table will require to update the order in the database and reflect the change. The database logic can be hidden behind which of the following domain abstraction, like order repository class. You would be like we deal with the order only, that repository. Okay? Repositories help you to get your aggregate persisted. Obviously, you can do read, update, delete, so that can help you to do that. You should create repository only for your aggregates and not for your entities, correct? Like you remember like when you work with this, so you would be creating a repository like for this only. So customer is there, so then create a customer repository and take care of updating all of this address, phone, name via this customer. Here we have order repository, so which would be creating. So it can be dealing with the caching, database, or any other storage layer. Wherever you are interacting with the storage layer, you would be using this kind of thing. Repositories are not DAO basically, but you would be using DAO in your repository. So try to understand a DAO is another design pattern, like repository is another design pattern. Try to understand with the example the code, but this is what you need to find it out while domain driven design, what repository should be created. So repository usually you would be creating for one aggregate root, one repository you can create it, and that repository can deal with like caching layer. So you would have a one concrete implementation for cache. It would be dealing with the database layer. So like Oracle database, suppose you are dealing with Oracle. If you are dealing with the REST API, then create a repository for REST API. If you are dealing with the Cassandra DB, then create a repository for Cassandra, kind of thing, correct? And inside that, even in fact, you can use the factory design pattern and return you the new aggregate root of that basically. So the DAO layer is just fetching the raw entities, and then a repository's responsibility using the factory pattern to create a new object and return as a output from the this factory and repository to bind all entities and create an aggregate that takes the repository itself. And if you have already used GPA or Hibernate, repositories are already being implemented. You are just using the annotations to basically use that repository, and you are not implementing when you use the GPA or Hibernate. So that is what you need to remember. Okay, so that's all about the factories. So now we are done with all the things which are designed let me go over here where we have this diagram. Yeah, this. So now strategic tool we have discussed. You need to find ubiquitous language, you need to find bounded context using the subdomain, you need to find the relationship between, and how do you integrate different bounded context using the like various pattern like we have discussed, anti-corruption layer here. Then the domain activities, what are three domain activities? Command, you would be sorry, these are the domain objects. Wait, I when I got confused here. So yeah, not this one. Yeah, these are activities, sorry. So the domain activities, commands, events and queries, and domain objects are entities, value object, aggregate roots, and domain abstraction, repository, factories and services. In fact, you can combine this and have as a single as well. So this is all as a part of tactical design. You need to get an outcome when you design a system using a domain driven design, that is expected out of this from you. So that's all about strategic tool, tactical tools. So this is the main is a domain driven design concepts, correct? So now let's go through like how do you find this detail, correct? What are the approaches available in the industry, which or in the AP industry is already following up, correct? So one of them is the event storming, which we will discuss in the next session. How do you find your domain? How do you find your events, command, and kind of thing? What approaches are being followed? So let me discuss that in the next session. So this all about this session, and we are done with the all technical and strategic part of the domain driven design. So thanks for watching, and I hope you like this session. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe it. Now it's Tommy.